Hello everyone, welcome back to the Cookie Edit. Today, I'm going to show you how to make amazing pumpkin spice macarons. Before I get started, I would like to mention that this recipe is inspired by the Broma baking recipe. So, for step 1, we're going to put our egg whites and about 3 tablespoons of our sugar in a bowl. For this step, it's really important to make sure it's just egg whites. So, if you have the whole egg in there, it's not going to turn out and the meringue is not going to turn out right. I would also like to mention before I start this recipe that unlike some of my past recipes, this is a difficult recipe and I was unsuccessful making this one once, but after getting some key tips that I will tell you later in the video, this recipe is a breeze every time. So I'm just mixing this. I'm using the same whisk that my stand mixer uses. So next we're going to whisk this in hot water until the egg white is foamy. This is a very important step, and for this I'm going to use a double boiler. And yeah, you're just going to want to make sure that water is steaming, and then once the water is steaming you can just put it over. I'm sorry, this is such a terrible camera angle. I've never filmed on my stovetop before. But yeah, so you're going to want it to be like foamy, exactly like this. This will only take a few minutes. Next, we're going to sift our powdered sugar and almond flour twice. You can also do this step before you start the recipe. It's fine either way. Make sure to sift this twice. If you have a food processor, you could also try sending it through the food processor, but I do not own a food processor ever since mine broke. So just sift this through like a fine strainer twice, so that I don't use too many bowls. I kind of just dump the powdered sugar over the bowl of the almond flour, and I just make sure to use those bowls. But you are going to need 2 bowls for this process if you don't want it to dump all over your counter. Yeah, so once you get to the end, just make sure that you're throwing away all of the clumps that form. Don't feel the need to put them through a strainer. Alright, so now we're going to put the egg whites in the stand mixer. And I'm just going to whisk them until there's like soft peaks. This step, in my experience, only takes a few minutes. Depending on what kind of mixer you're using, might take longer. For this recipe, you can also use a hand mixer. I'm just using a stand mixer because I didn't want to hold the mixer for the whole time. Keep that in mind. If you use a hand mixer, you're going to have to stand over the meringue for a really long time and mix. I actually refused to make macarons until I got a stand mixer. And then, yeah, so once it starts looking pretty foamy like that, we're going to add in the rest of our sugar. We need to make sure to do this step very gradually, or the meringue is going to deflate and it's going to be bad, and you do not want to see what will happen because you'll put in all this work and then it won't work. Yeah, I experienced it. Alright, so putting in all of the sugar that is left, and then you'll see that it starts to foam up a little bit more. That is good. We really want that. Yeah, we really want to make a stiff meringue to the point where if you hold it over your head, it should stay in the bowl. I did try this, and mine did. I was a little bit worried it would get all over my kitchen, but I made sure that it stayed in the bowl. Yeah, so I'm just adding the last of my sugar. And, oh, I also added my food coloring at this point. I just couldn't find the clip of me doing that. Alright, so we're going to take our sifted powdered sugar and almond flour. Make sure this sifted twice. If at this point in the video it is not sifted twice, go sift it again. You can never sift it too much. So, pause the video, sift it again, if you haven't already. But if you've already sifted it twice, you're ready to proceed. Alright, so you're going to want to just sprinkle it over the meringue mixture slowly. You don't want to do this too fast, just do it slowly. Now, alright, so at this point you're going to want to put it back on your stand mixer, and you're going to want to whisk it on the mixer for about 5 seconds. This is just to get it all incorporated. Don't worry, after this, we're going to get to mix it by hand. But at this point, we're going to mix it like this and make sure it gets incorporated. Yeah, so now we're going to fold. We're going to take the spatula from the outside and like fold it into the inside. And we're going to do this until it's the right texture. Some people describe it as flowing lava. I don't know about you. I have no idea what flowing lava looks like. So I use the figure 8 technique. Basically, we're going to do it until it can fall like softly into a figure 8. So like at this point, it would not be ready. But you can see me periodically checking to see if it'll be a figure 8. At this point, I also decided it wasn't orange enough, so I added some more orange food coloring. Alright, oh, and it should easily reabsorb. It shouldn't, like, stay as the figure 8 shape for very long. There. So, yeah, it was at this point where I decided it was ready. Now, we're going to fill a piping bag and pipe these onto a baking sheet. Some people really like to use a piping tip for this step. I do not do that. I just cut a hole in the piping bag, mainly because that makes cleanup a lot easier. I have this baking sheet that I got off Amazon that has a outline for where macaron shells should get piped. If you do not have this, you're going to want to pipe them about the size of a quarter. This is a silicone mat. I would highly recommend picking one up for just baking in general. I have a lot of them, and they're one of my favorite things. Now you're going to really want to tap this on the counter aggressively. Do not be scared during this step. They will turn out better. Alright, so we're going to let these dry on the counter. And basically what that means is you're just going to leave them alone on the counter and let them dry for an hour. Why I say dry is because you're going to want to be able to touch them and the top is going to feel a little bit dry. And that is very good for our recipe. Alright, and then after baking, you should be able to just remove them like this. Make sure not to open the oven while you're baking. That is my biggest tip. See how some of my macaron shells here ended up a little bit like the inside went in a little bit? Yeah, because I accidentally opened the oven while it was baking. Do not do that. Alright, now we're making our buttercream. I know, this has been a long recipe, but we're almost done. So, we're going to add our butter to the stand mixer. And you can also use a hand mixer, but your arm's going to get tired, so I'm using a stand mixer with a paddle attachment. Alright, so you're going to add that and put the paddle attachment on and just mix for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, and it should be a white color once it's done. And this will make it perfect. It will be so good. Yeah, I cannot even tell you guys how good this buttercream is. Alright, so next we're going to add our powdered sugar, our food coloring, and our pumpkin spice syrup. Lots of stuff. And for the pumpkin spice syrup, you can order it online. I'm just using like syrup I got to make pumpkin spice matcha lattes. But so just like general coffee syrup, I found mine at Target. You can also order it on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. And for this one, you're also going to whisk it for 10 minutes. And I just like to whisk the powdered sugar in a little bit before I whisk in the syrup. So once I add that, we'll be ready to mix for the final 10 minutes. This will make a really light and airy buttercream, perfect for your macarons. Next, we're going to pipe the buttercream into our shells. For this step, you're going to want to find the evenly matched macaron shells and just pipe the filling in the middle and close them up. I also don't use a piping tip for this step, again, because I think it makes cleanup a lot easier. But if you would like to use a piping tip, make sure to use a large one, but you can totally do that if you'd like. So I'm just filling my piping bag here with all of the icing. And then I'm finding evenly matched shells and just piping on the icing. They look like a really light orange in this picture because my phone camera was acting up. I promise they are darker orange. Also, if the buttercream isn't as orange as you'd like it, just add more food coloring. Oh, make sure to use gel food coloring for both the buttercream and especially the macaron shells. I didn't mention that earlier, but that's very important. Yeah, so we're basically almost at the end of the recipe. The next step is optional, but I think you guys really want to try it. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I got that pumpkin spice syrup for making matcha. So tell me if I should make a matcha video on this channel at all. Tell me in the comments. Alright, so for our last step, we're going to roll in pumpkin spice sugar. I know this step is very specific, and you might not have pumpkin spice sugar. But recently on vacation, I bought some, so I really wanted to use it. I'll have a link in the description if you want to use the same one that I bought. Yeah, so I'm just going to open it. As you see, I was having kind of trouble opening this jar. Then I'm taking a small bowl and shaking the sugar into the bowl. And then once I'm done with that, don't do a lot at the beginning because you won't want to waste it. I am not even lying. This stuff is so good. I also put it on oatmeal. And then you're going to want to just roll the macaron in the sugar until the edges are kind of coated. And then you're going to want to repeat that process for all of the other macarons. I am not lying to you guys when I say this is one of my favorite recipes I have ever made. I have made quite a few recipes since starting this channel a few months ago, but I'm obsessed with this one. That's it. We are done with this amazing recipe. These cookies are so good, and I would highly recommend you give them a try. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.